I'm Seraphina Voss, a woman of 28 summers, born and bred in the misty folds of Seattle, where the Puget Sound whispers secrets to those who listen. One Sunday evening, in the warm glow of my parents' dining room, I let slip my joy for a grand Alaskan cruise I'd been weaving together for the family. A $25,000 tapestry of luxury stitched with my own labor. But before the words could settle, my sister Natalie, with a smirk sharp as a fishhook, cut me down. "You thought you were invited?" she said, and my father, with a chuckle cold as the sound's depths, added, "It's for the core family, Sarah." The air turned to ice, their laughter a blade in my heart. Yet I held my smile, passing the roasted carrots as if my world hadn't just cracked open. What they didn't know was the secret I'd uncovered, a trust fund hidden from me alone that explained their scorn. Oh, they had no inkling of the storm I'd unleash. If you're stirred by tales of family turned foe, hit that subscribe button and join me for more on this YouTube journey. Now, I ain't one for boasting, but I've carved my path through life's brambles with little but my wits and a stubborn heart. While Natalie, 4 years my elder, danced through life on our parents' purse strings, and my brother Lucas, a lanky 30, lounged in the shade of father's tech empire, I toiled. 2 jobs I juggled to see myself through college, emerging with a marketing degree and a debt so small it barely cast a shadow. My post at a travel agency, though modest, gave me a foothold in Seattle's bustling heart. A 1-bedroom nest, plain, but mine, where I squirreled away pennies for a house I dream of owning. My parents, though, see only folly in my thrift, urging me to return to their fold like Natalie, who drifts back whenever her whims sour. Their dismissals of my labors, their blindness to my victories, stung worse than any winter wind off Elliott Bay. Yet that dinner, with its cruel jest, was no mere slight. It was a revelation, a spark that lit a fire they'd soon feel. Drop a comment with your hometown, and let's see where this tale finds you. The days following that fateful Sunday dinner in Seattle bore the weight of a lifetime's slights. Each memory a stone in the satchel of my heart. I'd always been the steady one, the daughter who rose before dawn to wrestle with life's demands while my kin lounged in the warmth of favor. My sister, Natalie, a woman of 32, wore the crown of our parents' adoration, her every misstep cushioned by their gold. 3 colleges she'd abandoned, her debt swept away like dust from a porch, while I clawed my way through university with sweat and sleepless nights. My diploma a quiet triumph they never celebrated. My brother Lucas, 2 years my senior, drifted in her wake. His post at father's tech firm a gift unearned, his errors forgiven with a pat and a smile. Yet my straight A's, my debt-free graduation, my steady climb to marketing coordinator, those were met with shrugs, as if my victories were mere table scraps, unworthy of notice. In my modest Seattle apartment, where the hum of the city seeped through thin walls, I built a life of careful plans. Each paycheck I split, 1 part for rent, another for a future home, a third for the distant dream of retirement. My parents scoffed at such prudence, their voices sharp with questions. Why waste coin on rent when their door stood open? But that door, I knew, led only to Natalie's shadow, where she lingered, her latest folly, a car wrecked in a moment's distraction, mended by father's checkbook. When my own faithful Honda faltered, its engine coughing like an old man in winter, their aid was nowhere found. Lucas, though kinder, played the family's game, texting me for counsel on his debts or dalliances, only to vanish when Natalie's laughter called him back. This pattern, woven through my 28 years, was no new thread. My childhood report cards, bright with promise, earned a curt "that's expected," while Natalie's middling grades sparked feasts, and Lucas's fleeting stage roles won trophies that gleamed on the mantel. My own honors, tucked in an attic box, gathered dust beside forgotten dreams. Yet I persisted, bearing gifts to every gathering, recalling each birthday with care, even as mine passed with a tardy text or none at all. I listened to mother's tales of neighborhood feuds, to father's endless boasts of his coding conquests, hoping one day they'd see me, truly see me, as their own. But that Sunday, as their laughter echoed over the cruise I'd poured my heart into, a darker truth emerged. A letter, tucked in an old trunk, spoke of a trust fund, my grandmother's legacy, meant for all her grandchildren, yet somehow barred from me alone. Natalie's new car, Lucas's cushioned life, all bore its mark, while I, the toiler, was cast aside. That secret, more than their words, lit a fire in my soul, a resolve to right a wrong older than the dinner itself. If you're following this tale, subscribe to catch the next twist, for the winds of change were only beginning to blow. The weeks before that cruel Sunday dinner had been a whirl of purpose, my hands busy weaving a grand tapestry for what I believed was a shared family venture. This Alaskan cruise, a $25,000 marvel of luxury, was to be a celebration of my parents' 35th year bound in matrimony, a journey through fjords and ice where whales sang and mountains stood sentinel. As a marketing coordinator at a Seattle travel agency, I wielded connections like a painter's brush, securing cabins with ocean views, dining under crystal chandeliers, and excursions to glaciers that gleamed like God's own mirrors. My employee discount, a rare boon granted by my kindly boss, shaved thousands from the cost, and I spent evenings poring over details, ensuring every moment would sparkle. I spoke with father of room assignments, with mother of formal gowns, with Natalie and Lucas of kayaking among seals, never once suspecting I was but a tool in their hands. The labor was no burden, for I thought it bound us closer, a rare chance to sit as equals at the family table. My heart swelled with the notion that my efforts would earn me a place among them, not as the overlooked daughter, but as one cherished. I'd weathered exclusions before, Christmases where gifts were swapped while I toiled late, promotions unremarked while Natalie's fleeting jobs drew praise, but this cruise felt different, a beacon of unity. I shared my research on Juneau's whale-watching tours, my voice bright with hope, and they nodded, their smiles masking the truth. Not once did they hint that the voyage was for 4, not 5, that my name was absent from the roster I'd so carefully crafted. That Sunday, as I stepped into my parents' Seattle home, a bottle of fine Pinot Noir in hand, a $120 splurge from my frugal purse, I felt the warmth of belonging. The house, with its cedar-shingled exterior and mother's cluttered shelves of porcelain doves, was a familiar stage, though its walls held few images of me. I greeted Natalie, sprawled on the couch, her phone a glowing shield, and Lucas, eyes fixed on a baseball game flickering across the new television father had bought. Dinner unfolded with the usual chatter, mother's tales of neighborhood spats, father carving the lamb with practiced ease, until I, seizing a lull, shared my excitement. "I've been reading about the glacier hikes in Skagway," I said, my fork poised over rosemary potatoes. "They say the views are otherworldly." The silence that followed was a living thing, heavy and sharp. Natalie's snort broke it, her eyes glinting with malice. "You thought you were invited?" she said, and father, setting down his glass, added, "It's for the core family, Sarah." Their laughter, joined by Lucas's uneasy chuckle, was a lash across my soul. Mother shifted, her gaze on her plate, offering no defense. I'd planned their dream, saved them thousands, only to learn they'd used me. My discount a prize they'd pocket while casting me aside. Worse still, the shadow of that trust fund, my grandmother's gift, withheld from me alone, loomed behind their words, a betrayal deeper than the cruise itself. My hands trembled as I passed the peas, but my voice held steady, for I knew then that their reckoning was coming. The drive back to my Seattle apartment that Sunday night was a journey through a fog thicker than any Puget Sound morning. No radio hummed, no podcast prattled, only the rhythm of my own heart pounding like a drum in a lonesome march. The city's lights blurred past, their glow mocking the darkness that had settled in my soul. I reached my modest home, a one-bedroom perch above the hum of Capitol Hill, and locked the door behind me. There, against its cold wood, I sank to the floor, the tears I'd held at bay bursting forth like a river breaching its banks. I wept not just for that cruel dinner, where my family's laughter had carved me hollow, but for the little girl I'd been, forever chasing love that slipped through her fingers like sand. In the silence of that darkened room, memories rose like ghosts. Christmases when I'd arrived, weary from the late shift, to find the gift-giving done, the wrapping paper strewn like fallen leaves. My 25th birthday, when they'd whisked away to a Whidgy Island cabin, claiming it a sudden whim, leaving me with a belated text and no apology. My promotion to marketing coordinator, a feat won through nights of toil, met with Mother's distracted nod and Father's remark that Natalie's new boutique job was the real news. Each slight, each oversight had been a pebble in my shoe, bearable until the weight became a wound. But that night, their words, core family, not invited, were no pebble, but a boulder, crushing the hope I'd nursed for 28 years. Worse still was the secret I'd uncovered days before, tucked in a yellowed litter among my grandmother's keepsakes. A trust fund, meant for all her grandchildren, had been carved up between Natalie and Lucas, its existence hidden from me. The new car Natalie flaunted, the ease of Lucas's life at Father's firm, these were no mere parental gifts, but the fruits of my exclusion. That knowledge burned hotter than the dinner's humiliation, for it spoke of a deliberate choice to cast me out, not just from their cruise, but from their legacy. I'd planned their $25,000 voyage, poured my heart into its every detail, only to learn I was but a servant in their eyes, my labor a means to their leisure. As the night wore on, my sobs grew quiet, the ache in my chest sharpening into something new. It was not despair, but a clarity, cold and unyielding, like the first frost on an autumn morn. I rose, my reflection in the window a stranger's, eyes swollen yet lit with a fire I'd never known. I thought of my grandmother, whose letter had spoken of her own battles with family favor, her words a whisper across the years, "Stand tall, child, for your worth is yours to claim." That dinner had not just broken me, it had revealed me. I was no longer the girl who'd nod and clear the plates. I would make them see me, not with pleas, but with a reckoning they'd never forget. By the dawn that followed that tear-soaked night, the hurt in my heart had hardened into a resolve as fierce as the gales that sweep the Olympic Peninsula. I had spent 28 years bending to my family's whims, but no more. The sting of their laughter at that Seattle dinner, the shadow of the trust fund they'd hidden from me, had kindled a fire that would not be quenched. As I sat at my kitchen counter, the morning light glinting off my coffee mug, my eyes fell upon my laptop, still open to the cruise bookings I'd crafted with such care. A revelation struck me like a thunderclap. Every reservation, every confirmation, every detail of that $25,000 Alaskan voyage bore my name, tethered to my work account and my will. The power was mine, and with it, a chance to turn their betrayal back upon them. I set to work with a clarity that felt almost holy. The travel agency's system, known to me as a sailor knows the sea, offered paths most travelers never glimpse. I could not cancel the cruise outright. That would send alerts to Father's inbox, spoiling the game too soon. Instead, I'd weave a subtler chaos, shifting dates, swapping names, redirecting notifications to a shadow email I controlled. But such a plan carried risks, for meddling with bookings could cost me my job, a post I'd fought hard to earn. Yet the thought of their smug faces, laughing as they sailed without me, was a spur sharper than fear. I requested 2 weeks' leave from my boss, citing a need for solitude, and she, with a knowing nod, granted it, urging me to tend my spirit. Next, I sought refuge, a place to vanish while my plan unfolded. The Olympic Peninsula, wild and fog-draped, called to me, and I found a cabin nestled among cedars, its windows framing the Pacific's endless churn. No Wi-Fi, scant cell service, just the kind of isolation I craved. I booked it for the cruise week, arranging for a neighbor to tend my plants and collect my mail, crafting the illusion of a simple retreat. As I packed, I unearthed my grandmother's journal, its leather cover worn soft by time. Her words, penned in a steady hand, spoke of her own battles with family favor, of standing firm when love was withheld. "Your strength is your own," she wrote, and I tucked the journal in my bag, a talisman for the days ahead. Each step of my scheming brought a strange calm, like the hush before a storm. I rerouted confirmation emails, placed a hold on Father's credit card charge, and adjusted the cruise to depart a day later, naming him a companion rather than the lead traveler. These changes, subtle as a pickpocket's touch, would unravel only when they reached the airport, their luggage packed with dreams I'd turned to dust. As I drove to the cabin, Seattle's skyline fading in my rear view, I felt not the weight of vengeance, but the lightness of justice. For the first time, I was no longer their shadow, but Seraphina Voss, charting my own course through uncharted waters. The cabin on the Olympic Peninsula was a sanctuary carved from the wild, its cedar walls cradling me as the Pacific roared beyond the cliffs. I had fled Seattle's clamor to this lonesome perch where the air smelled of salt and secrets. The world beyond felt distant, my family's betrayal a fading echo as I set about my work. 3 days prior, with the precision of a watchmaker, I'd woven chaos into their $25,000 Alaskan cruise. I'd shifted the departure to a day later, swapped Father's name to a mere companion slot, and diverted every confirmation to a shadow email I alone could read. A hold on the credit card charge, flagged for verification, ensured their plans would crumble like dry leaves when they reached the Seattle-Tacoma airport. Now, in the cabin's quiet, I waited, my laptop humming with the agency's back-end systems, the final threads of my plan drawn tight. The first day, I wandered trails where ferns bowed under morning dew, my boots sinking into earth that felt older than my grievances. My grandmother's journal, carried in my pack, became my companion, its pages a mirror to my soul. She wrote of her own kin, how they'd favored her brothers, leaving her to fight for scraps of regard. "They cannot dim your light unless you let them," she penned, and I felt her hand on my shoulder, urging me to stand tall. Her words steeled me against fleeting doubts. Had I gone too far? But the memory of Natalie's sneer, Father's core family, and the trust fund they'd hidden snuffed out such qualms. I was no villain, but a woman reclaiming her due. By evening, I powered my phone, its screen flickering in the cabin's dim glow. The family group chat lay silent as I'd expected. They were yet to reach the airport, their minds full of fjords and fine dining. I savored the calm, cooking a simple meal of trout and greens, the journal open beside me. My grandmother's tales of resilience, of outwitting those who underestimated her, felt like a map for my own path. I slept soundly, the ocean's lullaby drowning out the world. Come morning, I rose with the sun, its rays painting the cliffs in gold. Coffee in hand, I sat on the porch, the journal's final pages revealing a vow my grandmother made to live for herself when others turned away. As I closed its cover, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again, a storm breaking in the group chat. Father's words flashed first. "The reservation's gone wrong. Nothing's booked for today." Mother's panic followed. "We checked everything weeks ago." Natalie's venom was sharpest. "This is absurd. Where's Sarah?" Lucas, ever the follower, typed, "Has anyone called her? She did the bookings." I smiled, picturing him at the airport counter, luggage piled high, their faces crumpling as the truth dawned. The cruise line reported a tomorrow's departure. The payment stalled, the primary traveler, me, absent. My grandmother's voice echoed, "Let them see your strength." And so they would, in the chaos I'd crafted, a lesson they'd carry long after the fjords faded from their dreams. The morning sun climbed higher over the Olympic Peninsula, casting long shadows through the pines that guarded my cabin retreat. I sat on the porch with a mug of coffee, the steam curling like spirits in the crisp air. Below, the Pacific churned, its rhythm a counterpoint to the storm I'd unleashed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. My family, blissfully ignorant until they reached the check-in counter, now floundered in the chaos I'd spun. The $25,000 Alaskan cruise, their dream of luxury, had unraveled. Departure shifted a day, names jumbled, payments stalled by a hold I'd placed with a clerk's precision. My phone, powered on at dawn, buzzed with the fury of their group chat, each message a spark in the tinder of their panic. Father's words came first, sharp as a whip. "The reservation's not in the system for today. What's gone wrong?" Mother's followed, her tone frayed. "We confirmed this weeks ago. How can it be?" Natalie, ever quick to venom, typed, "This is ridiculous. We've been here an hour." Lucas, trailing as always, added, "Has anyone reached Sarah? She handled everything." I let the messages pile, their desperation a strange music to my ears. By 10 o'clock, the chat was a battlefield. Father's face, red as a winter apple in a sent photo, glared from the airline desk. Mother's eyes glistened with tears. Natalie's voice memo, shrill and slurred, hinted at a flask. "You did this, Sarah, didn't you? Always playing the martyr?" Lucas, softer, pleaded, "Sarah, please call. We can fix this." I turned from the screen to my grandmother's journal, its pages a refuge. She'd written of a day when her own kin turned from her, yet she'd walked on, head high. She'd written, "Their anger is their burden," and I took her wisdom to heart. I hiked the trail, where gulls wheeled above cliffs, the salt air washing away the last of my doubts. Their calls, father's gruff voicemails, mother's trembling pleas, even Natalie's curses, I silenced, letting the ocean's roar answer in my stead. By 10, the chat revealed their fate. The airline offered tomorrow's flight for a $10,000 fee, but the cruise would sail without them, its departure tied to my name, unchangeable without my word. Back at the cabin, I cooked a steak, its sizzle a small triumph, and opened a bottle of Pinot Noir, the twin of the one I'd brought to that fateful dinner. As stars pierced the sky, unmarred by city glare, I read on in the journal, my grandmother's final words a beacon. "You are enough, always." Their chaos, their cost, was no longer my chain. I was Seraphina Voss, not their shadow, and in this wild place, I found a peace they could not touch. Their reckoning was theirs to bear, and I, at last, was free to walk my own path, unbowed by their scorn. The Sunday after my family's cruise collapsed, I steered my old Honda back to my parents' Seattle home, the cedar-shingled house looming like a courtroom in the noon light. I had spent a week in the Olympic Peninsula's wild embrace, my heart fortified by my grandmother's journal and the chaos I'd spun at their expense. Now I stood on their porch, my knock deliberate, a stranger's gesture to a place I no longer called home. The door swung open, Mother's face a map of worry and relief, her voice soft. "Come in, Sarah. Everyone's waiting." The living room was a tinderbox, Father's knuckles white on his chair, Natalie's arms crossed like a fortress, Lucas offering a nod from his corner. I stood, refusing their offered seat, my resolve as firm as the cliffs I'd left behind. I began, my voice steady as a river's flow, not with accusations, but a question. What did they make of that dinner when they'd laughed me out of their core family? Natalie's eyes rolled, her words a spark. "You wrecked our $25,000 trip over hurt feelings? That's pathetic." Mother hushed her, her tone pleading. "It was a jest gone wrong, Sarah. No one meant harm." Father cleared his throat, his gaze hard. "You're twisting it. The cruise was for us four, a private affair." I let their words hang, then spoke of the trust fund, the secret I'd found in Grandmother's letter, a legacy carved for Natalie and Lucas, but barred for me. Father's face paled, his silence a confession, and I saw the guilt he'd buried beneath years of favoritism. I recounted their slights, not just the cruise, but a lifetime of them. My March birthday, forgotten 3 years running while Natalie's was feted with feasts. My college triumph, a 3.95 GPA earned through double shifts, ignored for Natalie's minor whims. Lucas, to my surprise, spoke up. "She's right." We laughed, and it was cruel. Natalie's glare could have scorched earth, but I pressed on, my voice rising like a tide. "You used my work, my time, my heart for your voyage, then cast me out. But that trust fund, why was I alone excluded?" Father sputtered, his defense weak. "It was a mistake, a paperwork error." But his eyes betrayed the lie, and Mother's tears confirmed it. I turned to them all, my words a blade honed by years of silence. "I'm done being your shadow, done begging for love you withhold. Reflect on this or cling to your excuses, but I'll accept no less than I deserve." Father stood, his voice low. "Walk out and don't expect a warm return." I met his gaze. "Actions have consequences, Father, as you've learned." Lucas rose, his voice soft. "Sarah, you're right. We've been rotten. I'm sorry." His words nearly broke me, but I nodded, hand on the door. As I left, their voices rose in argument, Natalie's venom clashing with Lucas's pleas. Outside, a neighbor watched, her curiosity plain, but I waved and drove away, the trust fund shadow trailing me, a question yet unanswered, but my heart, at last, my own. The weeks that followed my stand in that Seattle living room were a quiet tide washing away the echoes of my family's clamor. I returned to my work at the travel agency, my desk a haven where colleagues asked no questions, sensing the storm I'd weathered. The city hummed around me, its ferries slicing the sound, but my world was still, the group chat dormant as a winter field. I'd said my piece, laid bare the trust fund's sting and their lifelong slights, and now I waited, not for their remorse, but for my own heart to settle. The Olympic Peninsula's wild peace lingered in my bones, my grandmother's journal a compass guiding me toward a truth I'd long ignored. My worth was mine, not theirs to grant. The first crack in the silence came from Lucas, my brother, whose text arrived on a rainy Wednesday. "Hey, Sarah, just checking in. You okay?" I let it sit a day, then replied, "I'm fine. Thanks." His response was swift. "Coffee soon? Just us." We met at a downtown cafe, far from our parents' shadow, the air thick with espresso and caution. Lucas looked different, his usual swagger dimmed, his eyes searching mine. He remembered my oat milk latte, a small gesture that caught me off guard. That Sunday was a mess, he said, stirring his coffee. Natalie's raging, says you lost your mind. Mom's crying. Dad's talking lawsuits, but it's bluster. I nodded, letting him speak. You aren't wrong, Sarah, he added. I never saw how we sidelined you. Birthdays, your degree, all of it. I'm sorry. His words, plain and true, were a balm, and we talked for hours, not as rivals, but as siblings finding common ground. Natalie, true to form, took to Instagram, spinning a tale of betrayal, her posts cloaked in vague woe. Some family cuts deepest when you trust them most. Cousins chimed in, confused, while I stayed silent, her narrative as old as her spite. But a surprise came from Aunt Eleanor, father's sister, whose email landed like a lifeline. Sarah, I've seen Natalie's posts, and they smell of trouble. I've known your father's ways. There's a trust fund story I suspect you've uncovered. I'm here if you need me. Her words, free of judgment, warmed me, hinting at truths she might yet share. Mother's text arrived next, tentative as a deer at dawn. Made your lemon bars today, Sarah. I miss you. No apology, but a door ajar. I sent a brief thanks, keeping my guard. At work, a colleague mentioned Natalie's posts, the gossip spreading like wildfire, but I brushed it off, my focus on the horizon. Thanksgiving loomed, a ritual I once cherished. Would I go, knowing the trust fund shadow still hung? My friend Sarah, over dinner, urged me to speak my truth again, not for them, but for my own closure. As October's rains gave way to fall's golden hues, I drafted an email to my parents, outlining my pain and my terms, letting it rest in my drafts, a step toward a future I'd shape, not endure. 6 months had passed since that Seattle dinner where I laid bare my family's wrongs. The trust fund shadow now a wound aired. Spring's bloom touched my parents' home as I stood in their kitchen, stirring gravy for Easter, sunlight gilding new photos on the wall, my face among them, no longer exiled to attic boxes. Mother hummed, her apron dusted with flour, and asked me to check the rolls. I peeked into the oven, the warmth a quiet echo of the mending we'd begun. The road to this day was no straight path, but a winding trail through hurt and hope. Lucas, my brother, had become my staunchest kin, his calls a weekly ritual, his voice quick to challenge old favors when Natalie's shadow loomed. Our talks, once rare, now wove a bond I'd scarce dreamed possible, rooted in shared truths. Mother, too, had shifted, her coffee dates with me a space for honest words. She'd sought a counselor, a step I'd never thought her bold enough to take, and shared glimpses of her own youth, where she learned to favor the loudest child. Her apology, months back, had been a tearful reckoning. You never mattered less, Sarah. I was blind to think you needed less. Father, stubborn as the cedars of our peninsula, had been slowest to bend. His pride, bruised by my cruise gambit and the trust funds reveal, held him rigid. Yet in January, when he hauled boxes to my new apartment, his silence spoke louder than words. As we rested, he patted my knee, gruff. "You've done well, Sarah. Should have said it sooner." No grand remorse, but from him, a mountain moved. Natalie, ever the holdout, drifted in and out, her barbs dulled but present. Yet last week, she'd asked of my work, her eyes meeting mine, a small step, but a step. At the table, Father carved the ham, Aunt Eleanor setting places with care. I sat to his right, a seat once reserved for others, the shift unspoken but felt. He stood, his voice steady. This year showed us our flaws, especially to you, Sierra. I favored some, slighted you. I'm sorry. Tears pricked as I nodded, his words a balm. We're planning a new cruise, all of us, with your voice, Sierra, not just your skill. I smiled. I'd like that. Dinner flowed, voices mingling, Lucas's new job, Mother's library work, even Natalie's rare question about my travels. Later, she cornered me, plates in hand. That cruise stunt, clever, technically. I grinned. Trade secret. She paused. I've been rotten, Sierra. It's hard to change, but I'm trying. No full apology, but her effort was a seed. As we cleared, Eleanor whispered, "You've remade them, Sierra, by standing tall." That night, driving home, I felt a peace deep as the sound. The cruise that never sailed had stirred us to new waters. Not perfect, but healing. Share your tales of standing firm below. Hit like, share, subscribe for more of life's twists. My family's learning, and I've found my voice, a light no one can dim.